Hello and welcome to Your Health Matters. I'm Ron Porterfield.
And I'm Dr. Magda Porterfield.
And today we're going to be talking about the gut-brain connection.
That's right.
So there's a connection, isn't there?
There is.
And it is important that we look at this because it does have an impact on our mental health. Is that right?
Right, it definitely does.
So what is the gut and how is it exactly connected to our brain?
The gut is basically our whole digestive system, starting with our mouth and ending in various parts like the large intestine, small intestine, intestines, if I could get that out, colon, liver, gallbladder. All of these things, the stomach especially, all of these things are involved in the gut.
Yes.
And the gut and the brain communicates with each other through various means. We'll talk about that in a minute. And
Yes.
so because of that communication, there's a gut-brain connection. Something affects the gut, can affect the brain. Something that affects the brain can affect the gut.
Yes, that's very interesting.
It really is.
Yes.
I was excited when I learned more about this.
Yes. I find this fascinating too. The more we study physiology, the more interesting it becomes. And you think,
It really is.
this is one of those awe moments.
Amen.
Studying physiology can help us to have that awe moment. You talked about that.
Yes.
We talked about that in another episode. So let's talk a little bit more about the gut.
Well, it's interesting. The brain has about 100 billion neurons, but the gut has a little less, but it's quite a bit, 500 million neurons, especially that which is connecting it to the brain.
Okay.
So all these neurons are connecting the gut to the brain, and often the gut is called the second brain. I thought that was interesting. It operates, in a way, it operates independently of the brain, even though they're connected.
Yes.
It operates independently, and it has its own nervous system called the enteric nervous system. So with all of that involved, it's called the second brain. And we'll find out a little bit more why it's called that second brain in a moment.
Yes. Now, you've mentioned some things, but can you talk a little bit more specifically how these two are connected?
I can, the gut
Yes.
and the brain. There's one nerve that really connects them in particular. There's others, I should say, but one that I want to mention is the vagus nerve.
Yes.
I learned the other day, I think it was a woman at our church who gave a health talk, and she mentioned about the vagus nerve. And
That's right.
she talked about things that can strengthen it, and one of the things was singing. I thought that was very interesting. Singing in a group can strengthen that vagus nerve, but that vagus nerve connects the brain and the gut. And there's also neurotransmitters that connects the brain and the gut. And one neurotransmitter that's, when I think about mental health, that's a key part is serotonin.
Yes.
Most of the times we think that serotonin is largely produced by the brain, but I found out that serotonin, almost 90% of serotonin, that feel-good hormone, about 90% of it is produced in the gut.
Yes. Okay.
So that is very interesting to know, because then we can be able to increase or enhance the production of serotonin by how we take care of our gut. And that's why we think it's important to look at this gut-brain connection.
With you mentioning that, serotonin even being produced in the gut, and that says to me then that must have some sort of impact on our emotions then, is that right?
It really does.
Oh, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the gut's very sensitive to emotions.
Okay.
You ever feel like, well, let's say when you and I were courting,
Yes.
and did you experience butterflies in your stomach when you would talk to me?
Yes, sweetie, I did.
I did too.
Okay.
But it's that thought of, something exciting or whatever, and you feel it you think about it, you
Yes.
feel it in your brain, but you also feel it in your gut.
Yes.
And sometimes when things are just really upsetting to you, you feel that in your gut too. You get nauseous, or your stomach twists and all of that. So it shows that the emotions that we experience can also be felt in our gut. So the gut is very sensitive to emotions, and and sometimes the gut itself can contribute to emotion depending on what's going on. It can cause us or contribute to us feeling anxious or sad, so the connection goes both ways.
Wow, interesting. So let's talk a little bit more about gut health.
Yeah, gut health is so important. We know that the gut has a system called a microbiome.
Yes.
It's a diverse system of both good and bad bacteria.
We've been hearing a lot about that in the past few
Yes,
years.
you have, yeah. And you want that system to have more good bacteria than bad bacteria.
Yes, okay.
And so there are things that we can do with the gut that can upset that system and it not work as well. And this leads to a lot of, GI problems, ulcers, other issues that we have in our gut, but that can affect our mental health. So sometimes people are suffering from things like depression and anxiety and stress because their gut is not healthy. And we want to be able to get that gut working well.
Yes, yes. So now let's go a little further and then talk more specifically about how the gut health related to mental health.
Yes.
I mean, we touched on it a little bit, but let's go a little closer with that.
Yeah, there's research that shows that the two are related. I just want to mention two different ones. First of all, there's research with mice. And they looked at anxious mice. We really can't measure anxiety in mice as we do with human beings because they can't report anything. But we just look at some of the behaviors that they engage in, shaking or moving about. And what they did was they took a strain of gut bacteria from mice who were anxious.
Okay.
And they I guess they probably injected that bacteria into mice who were more calm. Guess what happened to the more calm mice when they got the gut bacteria from the more anxious mice?
They became more anxious.
They became more anxious. So that was a clue to the researchers that gut bacteria can affect mental health. And then there's a lot of studies that's been done on humans. This is a small scale study that was done in UCLA by a researcher named Mayer. They recruited 25 healthy women, small sample, and for 4 weeks, 12 of these women ate a cup of commercially produced yogurt. And then the other 13 women didn't have any yogurt. What they found was before and after the studies, they were giving brain scans to gauge their recognition to some facial expressions they put on a screen.
Yes.
And before and after the study, they measured it to see how they were doing. After the yogurt was consumed for those 12 weeks, those women were found to be more calm than the 13 women who did not eat the yogurt.
Wow.
And we know yogurt has a lot of live bacteria in it, good probiotic. So again, that was some indication that good bacteria is important and the gut is important for keeping us more calm.
I think we should maybe have a mission to hand out a lot of yogurt around the world right now.
Yeah.
We need some more calm spirits working, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And we'd want to hand out the plant-based, wouldn't we?
Yes, we would. Yeah,
Yes.
we'll do the plant-based yogurt.
Yeah.
Still be effective, right?
Yeah, it's still good. I have it.
Yeah, let's hand out some tracts and yogurt.
Yes. You don't care for yogurt too much, I know.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but for those who can handle it, there are other ways that we could get probiotics in our diet. In fact, I could mention that now.
Yes, please. Yes.
We could get the other foods we could use for good gut health. One food that I really like, I focus on this a lot with my clients, and that's omega-3.
Yes.
It's good for so many things, but the research shows that it's good for good gut health.
Interesting.
You get omega-3 from things like flax seeds, chia seeds, leafy green vegetables. You get it from walnuts. So it's important for us to get some form of omega-3 in our diet every single day. It's good for mood enhancement, but it's good for the gut, that gut-brain connection.
Yes.
Another sort of food we can eat that will help with gut health is high-fiber foods. Those fibers, part of those high-fiber foods keep our gut clean.
Yes.
They clean it out. Good colon health.
We need that.
We need that. And then foods high in something called tryptophan. That is actually a precursor to serotonin.
Yes.
So it helps increase the production of serotonin. So we want to get foods high in tryptophan because we want that serotonin so we can have a good, calm mood.
Oh, yes.
And some of the foods that we get tryptophan from
Tryptophan, yes.
is black-eyed peas, soybeans, and pumpkin seeds.
Oh, yes.
So we want to get these foods. There are other foods that can help with gut health, but I just wanted to mention these three to get our viewers on the road to getting good health. Not yogurt only, but high-fiber foods, omega-3 foods, and foods high in tryptophan, just to name a few.
Yes, and those are some good sources that you mentioned. They have so many other beneficial vitamins and minerals.
That's
So get your
right.
black-eyed peas, get your pumpkin seeds. These can also be good for men,
That's
for
right.
men's health, pumpkin seeds, and for all of us, getting that zinc.
Mm-hmm.
But getting that tryptophan, which you mentioned, is a precursor to serotonin, so
That's
we can
right.
have those stable moods. Now, I know that there are some health habits that can also be beneficial for promoting a healthy gut.
Yes.
Let's mention some of those.
Yes, Ellen G. White, a powerful health educator,
Yeah.
inspired woman that we really look up to in our church.
That's right.
She has come up with the information about keeping, and at that time she says the stomach and digestive system clear.
Yes.
She came out with this over 100 years before these scientists looked into gut health. So grateful for her writings. And so there's some things in her writings that she talks about will keep our digestive system going well. And I just want to mention a few of them. One is that we want to take at least 4 to 5 hours between meals before we eat one meal to the next, because it takes that time for the food to digest. We also want the stomach to rest. And so if we don't do a lot of snacking in between meals and we just wait, that will help us to have better gut health, I believe. And I wanted to say, too, that there may not be much science showing this, but because we believe so strongly that she was inspired by the Lord, we don't always have to have the science.
That's right.
I truly believe that.
Yes, so do
Science
I.
is great,
Yes.
but inspiration is even better.
Science is great when it harmonizes with the Bible
That's
and
right.
spirit of prophecy. Is that
Amen.
right?
Amen.
Amen.
Something else we want to do is not eat too close to bedtime.
That's right.
Because we don't want the digestive system to be working all the time. It needs rest.
And as we talked about in the previous
That's
program,
right.
that it can interrupt sleep,
That's right.
which causes a big problem.
Yeah, so we don't want to eat close to bedtime. We want our food to digest 3 to 4 hours. We want to end our food before going to bed. We don't want to drink and eat at the same time. Mm-hmm. That when we drink, it dilutes our digestive juices and it leads to poor digestion, which can, again, affect gut health.
Yes.
We want to make sure our food is thoroughly chewed. Chew it to a creamy texture. And for some of us, such as myself, that's something we have to continue to work on, is make sure our food is thoroughly chewed.
Maybe with all of us, right? We
Yeah.
need to practice that.
Yeah. We want to try not to engage in anything that will make us feel anxious or lead us to feel. I tell my clients, nothing makes you, so I have to change my language, will lead us to feel anxious or stressed or angry. We want to make sure that we're calm when we're eating.
Yes.
So all of these things can help us with our gut health. And these are just simple things that we can do, but for some it's hard. I remember when I started to implement these habits, it was hard for me not to drink and eat. Mm-hmm. It was hard for me not to snack.
Yes.
I wanted to eat something up until bedtime. But with practice, some people say it's 21 days for a habit, some people say longer. Mm-hmm. If you just determine in your mind that you want to change these habits because you want to have good gut health, God can help you with these things.
It's amazing when we think about just how we eat and drink. What we eat and drink can actually affect our mental health.
It really is
and
amazing.
you touched on a little bit of this, and there's something else we did, lifestyle and mental health.
Yes.
But I appreciate this going a little bit further into showing this gut-brain connection.
Yes.
So this is of vital importance that we are paying attention to even things like chewing. Mm-hmm. And eating and drinking, this can have an impact on our mood. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
Yes.
I have some more quotes that I want to share.
Yes, please.
Specific quotes from Ellen White. We could show this first one on the screen. She tells us in Testimonies, Volume 2, page 603, if the stomach is burdened with too much food, even of a simple character, the brain force is called to the aid of the digestive organs. Mm-hmm. Too much food takes the brain force from the brain and gives it to the digestive organs. So what's happening with the brain when you're pulling force from them?
It's being benumbed.
It's being benumbed. It's not working well. So we don't want to do that. Even with the good plant-based foods that we encourage, we have to be temperate with it. That's one of the laws of health. Mm-hmm. So we want to do that so we won't have a benumbed brain. Another quote that I want to share that we could show on the slide, the digestive organs have an important part to play in our life happiness. People who have a sour stomach are very often of a sour disposition. If we would have peace among ourselves, we would give more thought than we do to having a peaceful stomach. I always wondered when I read these quotes, I said to myself, I wonder how many sour stomachs there are in some of these meetings we have, whether it be in a corporation or in
Yes.
church. People are arguing at each other, bitter with each other, irritable. I wonder if it's because they don't have good gut health
Could be.
and they have a sour stomach.
You know, after listening to you present this here, it could very well be the challenge, one of the many
Yes.
different challenges.
That's right.
Yes.
And I do have one more quote. I didn't know if we had time, but we do have time. It's not on the slide. I'll just read this one. It says, "It is impossible for the brain to do its best work when the digestive powers are abused. Many eat hurriedly of various kinds of food, which set up a war in the stomach," that's amazing, "and thus confuse the brain." So when we eat different kind of foods, when we eat hurriedly, our brain, there's actually a war in the brain, a great controversy going on in the brain, the stomach.
Mercy.
And that great controversy in the stomach can affect the brain. I'm laughing, but it's serious.
Yes.
We want not to have that war going on. We want peaceful stomachs so we
That's
can have a peaceful brain.
That sounds like a lot of inner turmoil.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, a war in the stomach and a confused brain.
Yes.
That does not sound like a place that any of us would like to be.
No, no. So these are all things that we can encourage our viewers to do to start to pay attention to your gut health. Not only what you eat, but how much and when, and all these other factors are important. So because your health matters, I want to encourage our viewers to take care of their digestive system. It'll take some practice if you're not used to some of these things, but with God's help, you can change many of these habits and become healthier.
There you have it, friend. That's your call. That let's be more cognizant of what we eat and how we eat, because it is directly related to our brain, and we want to have brains that work optimally, right? That can be a conduit for God's Spirit so that we can do His will. Thank you for joining us on this segment here. We'll be right back with a natural remedy. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to our Natural Remedy spot. I like herbs. Herbs can be such a wonderful blessing. They have been a blessing to me, and I'm sure that they've been a blessing to many out there. The Bible tells us that herbs are given for the service of man, and we know that they have been for the service of man down throughout the ages. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about herbs. Specifically, we're going to talk about herbal compresses, and we're going to talk about just a few herbs and how to make different herbal preparations. One of my favorite herbs is mullein. Mullein can be so beneficial for helping to relieve congestion, helping someone to be able to breathe freer, also helping to relieve inflammation, so it's anti-inflammatory. Lobelia is also beneficial for that, anti-inflammatory, helping to relieve congestion, and the two of these herbs work together quite well. Now, it seems harder these days to get loose herbs. We know that we can find herbal supplements in many places, but if you would like to have some loose herbs, that is, you can buy in bulk, I would suggest you look online and simply look up bulk herbs, places that you can get them, and you can find a few places online. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about mullein and lobelia, because we're going to be talking about a wonderful compress that we can put together in order to relieve some challenge that someone may be having. Well, first let's talk about how we can make this compress. What we would have to do, we'd have to make a tea. It's not actually a tea because tea is an actual leaf. People drink tea because it comes from a tea leaf. But sometimes we make herbal preparations and we call it an herbal tea. That's technically not accurate, but we get the idea. It's a drink made from herbs. So when we make a liquid from tea in order to drink, or in this demonstration to make a compress, an herbal compress, what we're really doing is making an herbal infusion or an herbal decoction. So the infusion would come from the softer parts of the plant, leaves, stems, flowers, in which we would put some of these parts in something like a bowl or a cup or something, and then pour some hot boiling water over it, and allowing that to sit and steep for about 15 to 30 minutes. Now, for the harder parts of the plant, we're talking about the roots, barks, and seeds. We would put whatever amount of those into a pot and bring those to a boil, and then turn them down and let those simmer for about 20 minutes. After which time we would strain those, and then we would have our liquid preparation from the herb with all the constituents in it that we can either use to drink, or in this case that we can make an herbal preparation. So let's say here now I've made an herbal infusion with mullein and lobelia, and this particular combination has been known to be very helpful for people who have thyroid problems or inflammation of the neck. Some people you might have seen that have goiter, they have hormonal issues, thyroid issues. And so the ratio that we would want to use for this combination is 3 parts mullein and 1 part lobelia. That's 3 parts mullein and 1 part lobelia. And we would make an herbal infusion out of that. We have it here in the bowl. And so I have a strip of cloth here. On another presentation, we talked about the benefit of a heating compress. Well, I had a strip of cloth like this. And so what I'm going to do is simply to dip my cloth into my mullein lobelia herbal mixture here, my herbal infusion. Now this can be at room temperature, that's fine. And so as you do this, you dip this in, it's going to take into itself the properties from the herbs. And I'm going to wrap this around my wife's neck. Let's say if she had some inflammation going on here, or her thyroid was swollen. Of course, you want to make sure that you are talking to your doctor and not simply relying on this only. I mean, that is, if your case is a very serious one. So we're going to wrap this plastic around here, and then wrap this around too to keep this a little warm. All right. And then you can wear this for several hours. As a matter of fact, you can just wear this to bed, sleep with it overnight, and then take it off in the morning. And depending on the severity of your condition, you may have to wear it several nights, maybe a few weeks. There again, it depends on what's happening with your body, what's going on with your particular situation. All right, so that's a mullein and lobelia herbal mixture, herbal infusion to make this particular herbal compress. And so there again, an herbal compress is simply a cloth that has been dipped in an infusion or decoction and applied to the body to bring about healing of a particular condition. Now, I mentioned that mullein is one of my favorite herbs because it can help to get rid of congestion in the lungs, the tissue, wherever you apply it. And so someone who might be having asthma or pneumonia, they are congested, their airways perhaps are blocked, a mullein compress can work wonders for bringing about wonderful relief. For that, you can actually drink some of the mullein. You can drink a couple of cups of mullein tea a day, actually 2 or 3 cups a day. Drink some nice warm mullein tea. And you could also apply some to the chest to loosen up the bronchioles and to bring in a easier breathing. So I would take a cloth. It doesn't have to be this thick. This is a washcloth. But I would dip that into my mullein infusion, wring it out a little bit. And if my wife would was having some chest congestion or some hard time breathing, I would apply this cloth that had been dipped in the mullein infusion to her bare chest, and then wrap it around with some plastic, and then put a t-shirt on her, and then she could go to bed and sleep with this overnight. So that is another compress that you could do. So here we've demonstrated the mullein and lobelia compress for the neck if someone's having swelling in the neck. Here it would be the mullein compress if she was having some congestion, some hard time breathing. Another one that we could talk about is, we could talk about many. So many plants out there, so many herbs that you could come across. As a matter of fact, some of you may have some of these herbs growing in your own backyard. Many of these herbs, they grow wild, like mullein, like lobelia. In many places you can see plantain growing around. Another one of my favorite is comfrey. Comfrey is a wonderful plant. It's also called knit bone, and it can really help to restore tissue and to help bones mend much quicker. As a matter of fact, let's say my wife had, let's say she had hurt her wrist. Or maybe she had sprained her wrist. Let's say that. Okay, I'm going to take your chest compress away. Let's say she had hurt her wrist, and she checked with the doctor. She found out that she sprained her wrist, and she's doing some different things to try to heal it. Maybe I've done some other treatments on her. I would take now my mullein. Okay, now this is a mullein infusion, all right? All right, use your imaginations. I would take my cloth. Yes, excuse me, this is now a comfrey infusion. Thank you, comfrey. And I would dip my cloth in the comfrey infusion, which is, again, called knit bone. It's good for restoring tissue, for mending bone really quickly. And then I would wrap that comfrey compress around my wife. Then I would wrap some plastic on her ace wrap around that. And comfrey has been known to bring about really wonderful healing to tissue and bone, as I've said before. And so her wrist should be able to be restored much quicker. And she could wear something like this every day for weeks, for as long as she needs it. Simply take it off and renew it every day. Now, you could make something like this infusion or decoction for one of these compresses, and I would say it would be good to use the same one for about 2 or 3 days. If you still have some left over, I would say you would want to dump it and make some fresh. Now, in those 2 or 3 days that you are using the same infusion or decoction, it's best to keep it in the refrigerator, and then you can take some out and then to use as needed. Thank you for joining us here on Your Health Matters.